All right, heading into week 14. Yes, I cannot believe it. We're already here, week 14. I am giving you my top 10 waiver wire pickups. Before we get to that, do me a favor, drop a like, subscribe if you like the content, and comment down below what you need to win your matchup as Monday Night Football is happening tonight. I want to know, what do you need to make sure you secure that dub? And let me know how many teams you have in the playoffs this year. Our playoffs start week 15. I wonder what the case is for you guys. But here we go. Just quickly, I'm going to give you some honorable mentions. The players on this list either didn't make my top 10 or they should already be rostered, so I didn't put them in the top 10, okay? Donovan Peoples-Jones, I'm very intrigued what he will look like as the Browns continue to develop with Deshaun Watson. Very favorable upcoming schedule, and maybe that chemistry continues to grow. Jameson Williams, not active very much at all this week, but again, another player who, coming back from injury, could be an option at flex down the stretch. Probably not, but still potential. OBJ, in case he signs with the team, we've been very anti-OBJ being a factor this year, but he's worth rostering. Demarcus Robinson, because there's a pretty good schedule coming up this week, and there's nowhere else really to throw the ball to. Jordan Mason, because he should be the handcuff for CMC if you have CMC, and then Trent Sherfield, and in case Jalen Waddle were to miss time, then Sherfield would be a decent desperation throw-in guy. All right, let's get to the top 10. We're gonna go from number 10 all the way down to number 1, and I think there could be some really important pieces in today's video for your playoff run, specifically the tight end position. All right, at number 10, let's get this one out of the way. Front get-go, let's talk about this. Running back handcuffs. You need to have your running back handcuffs. That needs to be a priority as we are heading into the fantasy football season. Most people's playoffs will start week 15. Maybe yours is 14, whatever the case may be. Just hopefully, God, I hope that you don't have a week 18 championship. That is, don't do that, okay? But regardless, playoffs are going to be starting soon. And what you don't want to happen is your superstar running back going down and you have no one to replace him. And these other teams that have worse records are able to beat you to the waiver wire, or people who have more fab are able to beat you to the waiver wire. For example, last year, I was on a playoff run in my home league. I picked up Justin Jackson when he was on the Chargers and when Austin Eckler had an injury. I don't know if you guys remember that last year in the playoffs. When Eckler went down, I picked up Justin Jackson, and the person I was facing in the playoffs had Austin Eckler. So I was able to block him from Justin Jackson. Justin Jackson went off for like 30 fantasy points, and I ended up winning that week. And that was a big reason why I was able to go on and win the championship in my home league last year. So let's talk about it. Josh Jacobs, you probably want Zamir White handcuffed. Saquon Barkley, clearly it's Matt Breida right now. Joe Mixon, very clearly it's Samaje Perine. He's filled in really well for Joe Mixon. Hardly even notice a difference with that team. For Jonathan Taylor, it's likely Deion Jackson. For Austin Eckler, there are some question marks here. But in my opinion, I believe it's Joshua Kelly. When Joshua Kelly has been healthy, he's been the one getting opportunities, not necessarily Isaiah Spiller. For Dalvin Cook, it's obviously Alexander Madison. For James Cook, I believe it's Keontae Ingram. Now, there's others that I could have put on this list, but the point being is, if you have space, you would do yourself a favor. You would do yourself a service here by having the handcuff on your team. Now, if you don't have the space and you just can't do it, fair enough. But the worst case scenario for you would be that you picked up a wide receiver 3 on a team instead of your handcuff, and then the playoffs, your superstar running back goes down. You know, that would be the worst case scenario for you. All right, at number 9, Jahan Dotson, currently rostered in 31% of sleeper leagues. Finally, we are seeing Jahan Dotson's role grow with Taylor Heineke. You know, Jahan Dotson to start the year was really, really good. He was actually fantastic, but that was with Carson Wentz. He was able to build up chemistry with Carson Wentz while Terry McLaurin was in a holdout. That's why Jahan Dotson and Carson Wentz looked so good together. Then Jahan had the hamstring injury. Taylor Heineke comes in. We know Heineke forces the ball to Terry McLaurin, but this is the first week that we've seen a big target share for Jahan Dotson with Taylor Heineke. He had 9 targets, I believe. The unfortunate part, and the reason he's not higher, is the Commanders are on bye this week, and then it's the fantasy playoffs. So it's unlikely that you ever feel comfortable starting him. However, if he puts up a big week 15 performance and you have an injury, maybe you could flex him. but at the same time, I have him quite low for those reasons. Love the talent, first round talent, someone I think who should have been prioritized more for the Commanders already. However, for all the reasons that I mentioned, I'm not going to put too much fab into him, about 5% of my fab. Real desperation, like let's see what happens type of player. All right, at number 8, Nico Collins, currently rostered in 40% of sleeper leagues. This was Nico's 4th game of the season where he saw 9 or more targets. And keep in mind, he actually missed 2 games due to injury as well. So he's been getting a pretty high target share consistently this year. He's currently averaging, I believe, 6 targets per game or so. And on those 10 targets he got this week, he put up 35 yards and a touchdown. Not that impressive, but keep in mind it's Kyle Allen, and this offense is just not flowing in general. So the opportunities are going to continue to be there in a wide receiver core that is very barren. Opportunities are there. Maybe Nico can be a good flex option, desperation flex, if injuries come up in the fantasy playoffs for you. Keep in mind, his fantasy playoff schedule is really good. Check this out. He has the Chiefs in week 15. They're the 4th best matchup for wide receivers. He has the Titans the next week. They're the best matchup for wide receivers. And then in the championship week, he has the Jags, which are the 9th best. So all these are top 10 matchups. So again, if someone on your team sustains an injury, he could be a spot start if you become in a desperate spot. I'm willing to spend about 10-15% of my fab, depending on how desperate you are for a potential flex in the future. All right. At number 7, I talked about tight ends a little bit. I think there's a legit option here. Look, keep in mind, the tight end landscape is just pure hell. And I think I have 2 tight ends for you today that should be rostered and could contribute to rosters rest of season. The first one is Daniel Bellinger, or as I like to call him, the old Bellend. Currently rostered in 6% of sleeper leagues. First game back from injury, he tied his career high in targets and receptions with 5. There is a clear need for a pass catcher on this Giants offense. It's Darius Slayton, and he's trying his best. Then it's Richie James at times. This team clearly needs another option in their passing attack. And before his injury, he already had 2 touchdowns on the year. It only helps his case that they cut Hudson earlier this week, which opened up more opportunities for him this week. But look, for Daniel Bellinger, he was on the field this game for every play except for 2 plays. So with the tight end position being so difficult to process and some good matchups coming up in the playoffs, I think Bellinger is worth a roster spot. I'm willing to spend about 10-15% of my fab if I can afford it and if I'm really desperate at the position. But let's be honest, you pick him up, maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't, but you can drop him pretty easily. I'm in a position where I started Hayden Hurst this week. Like, I'm definitely considering picking up Bellinger. Why not? He's a rookie. He's already gotten 5 targets, had, the most involvement he's ever had as far as like play percentage. So why not spend some fab on him to get a potential starter? At number 6, Jared Goff. This is specifically if you need a streaming option at the quarterback position this week. Currently rostered in 49% of sleeper leagues. He faces the Vikings in week 14, who currently give up the 10th most points to the fantasy quarterback position. And Jared Goff is coming off back-to-back 20-plus fantasy point performances. That's in a 6-point passing touchdown league. If you don't play 6-point, I mean, come on, what are you doing? A touchdown is 6 points. So should a passing touchdown for a quarterback. But Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jared Goff are on absolute fire. It's a very good matchup. I expect them to continue to be in sync. And again, is Jared Goff someone that you want to start all the way throughout the playoffs? No, but if you lost Jimmy G, or if we're not sure if Tua is going to play, I think you will. But if you lost a quarterback today, Jared Goff could be a good replacement for you. So I'm willing to spend about 15% of my fab. He actually has some decent matchups in the playoffs as well. All right, at number 5, this is probably the most confusing waiver of the week because I don't exactly know which direction to point you guys. And that is DJ Dallas or Tony Jones or Travis Homer. I mean, we don't know the severity of Ken Walker's injury at this very moment. He sustained an ankle injury, but at the time of recording this, I'm not sure how serious it is, what the long-term ramifications could be, but it could be a serious injury. And if Ken Walker is to miss time, there will be value in this backfield. I'm just not sure exactly where it would be. keeping in mind that they have a very good matchup versus Carolina in week 14 as well. Right now, DJ Dallas is rostered in 3% of leagues. Travis Homer, he was inactive, but he's also rostered, I think, about 3% of leagues. Tony Jones is not rostered. Like, he's 0% rostered. So it's going to be difficult to find the right running back. But if you're able to, throw out, let's say 5 to 10% of your fab, and let's say you do bet on DJ Dallas and it ends up being him, and Ken Walker is out for 4 weeks or so, then you just found like a free flex option or a free running back if injuries go down in your league on your team. So again, I don't have this as a high priority because I don't know who the running back will be. And in fact, I more feel like this will be a running back by committee rather than someone getting consistent touches. This week, I believe DJ Dallas and Tony Jones both saw 11 touches. So that could be a sign of things to come. There are some good matchups upcoming, but look, I can't advise you to go out and spend it all because there's no clear handcuff here. I think it will be a committee. But again, if you need help, if you're desperate, if you're in a desperate spot, if you went 0 RB strategy this year, and let's say Devin Singletary now looks, his status in that backfield is unknown, go pick up DJ Dallas. Spend about 5% of your fab, 10% of your fab. Pick up Travis Homer. Like, let's see if you can find some sort of value in this backfield. But again, I'm not going to break the bank at all. Nowhere close. All right, at number 4, Cam Akers, currently rostered in 55% of sleeper leagues. Others might have Cam Akers higher on this list. However, I am still very skeptical of Cam Akers, and to be honest, the Rams offense in general. Akers has seemingly lost his job and regained it, 4 to 5 times this year? Like, this year alone. Lost it to Darrell Henderson, then he got it back, then he was benched, then we had Kyren involved. I mean, it's been back and forth all year, and he hasn't really been efficient in most performances this year as well. Doesn't help that he's behind a very bad offensive line. But Kyren Williams this week was completely uninvolved after dominating the touches last week. Akers had 18 touches last week compared to Kyren's 4. And while Akers was extremely inefficient at 3.5 yards per carry, he did get into the end zone twice. However, again, the reason I'm skeptical is because I struggle to find a scenario in which you will ever want to play any Ram, not just Cam Akers, but any Ram for the rest of the season based off of this offense's current predicament. John Wolford's a quarterback. Sometimes he's getting injured, and then we have Bryce Perkins, and there's no Allen Robinson, there's no Cooper Kupp. The offensive line is in shambles. I mean, you can pick up Cam Akers, but will you be confident to start him? I don't know. I don't think there will be a scenario in which I will be confident to start him. However, he is still technically an RB1 on a team, so that is worth a roster spot. I'm saying about 15% of my fab. I don't want to spend any more of that, but I think this could be a trap because we've seen this before. I mean, so many times we've seen him reach a season high in snap percentages and touches, and then the next week it's completely taken away. It just does not make sense. I can't make sense of it. Maybe you can. But at number 3, another tight end that I think is well worth a pickup, and that is Greg Dulcich, who is currently rostered in 42% of sleeper leagues. Cortland Sutton went down in this game with a hamstring injury. And again, as we know, the tight end position is hell. So when a rookie starts to get the kind of looks that Dulcich has gotten so far, we have to pay attention. This week, Dulcich had a career high in fantasy points as he put up 6 receptions on 8 targets for 85 yards. I mean, that is a very impressive stat line. And there are some really good matchups upcoming. Kansas City, and then in week 15, the first week of the playoffs, he has Arizona. Guys, Arizona is the best matchup for your fantasy tight end that you could possibly have. They have been getting dominated by tight ends all year long. So with Sutton's hamstring injury and Jerry's history of injury and inconsistencies, Greg could become a very reliable streaming option heading into the fantasy playoffs. So I like the matchups that are upcoming. I like what I've seen from him. Athletic tight end who can stretch the field. He is well worth a roster. For me, he'll be my first priority as far as tight ends go this week. I'm willing to spend about 25-30% of my fab. I know that number would sound high if we were like in week 2 or 3 or something, but what are you waiting for at this point? You know, like, it's time to spin your fab and take shots because you don't have many more chances to do so. All right, at number 2, we have James Cook, who is currently rostered in 31% of sleeper leagues. How confusing is this Buffalo Bills backfield? Singletary has been playing well most of the season, and even last season, right? He was like a superstar in the fantasy playoffs. Then you draft James Cook really high in the NFL draft. You don't use him at all. Then you trade for Nyheim Hines, and the assumption is Nyheim Hines is going to be massively involved. He's not involved at all. And now you start to use James Cook and Devin Singletary pretty much evenly. It is extremely confusing. However, James Cook is coming off a career high in snap percentage. In fact, it's like a clear, like 43% is his new career high this week. Before that, it was 26%. So this is like a clear jump for James Cook in opportunities. He also has a career high in rushing attempts, targets, receiving yards, and total touches. He had 20 total touches. Now we need to be aware of what happened in that game versus New England though, because they were dominating the entire time. And there's no promise that this is going to be some sort of identity that they've found and they're no longer going to run through Josh Allen. But we can't ignore a 20 touch game where he put up over 100 total yards and over 16 fantasy points in a PPR format. So I personally believe that you're not going to be able to predict this backfield on a weekly basis. So I am concerned about consistency, and I don't think you really want to trust him with your life on the line in the playoffs, but he is a must roster. And in week 14, if we see like another bump in production and Singletary's usage goes down, then yeah, I think you could potentially start him heading into the playoffs. He is must roster based off of what we saw this week. I'll spend about 30, even more if you're desperate, percent of my fab to go out and get James Cook just to see what he could potentially be. And at number one, this was my number one pickup last week on this same video that we do. That is Zonovan Bam Knight, currently rostered in 55% of sleeper leagues. Not only was he my number one pickup last week, he was also one of my starts of the week last week. With no Michael Carter, he put up 90 rushing yards on 15 carries, uber efficient at 6 yards per carry, while also adding 5 receptions. He caught all of his targets for 28 yards, and he looked incredible doing it. When I was on this video last week, I told you guys, I went back, I looked at every single play. He looked very explosive. He was breaking tackles, running on a mission, running with passion. Not, literally every single play, it felt like he was trying to make it his last, or, I guess performing as if it was his last, trying to impress. And we saw that again this week. He played really, really well. Bam was on the field for 47 plays. The second closest was Ty Johnson, who had 28. So he was clearly the guy without Michael Carter. When Michael Carter is back, I anticipate this being a split backfield. And if you're like, really? Is it going to be a split backfield? Well, it already was a split backfield before Michael Carter's injury. And with their upcoming schedule, which is very good, check this out. In the playoffs, week 15 to 17, Lions, Jags, Seahawks. And the last week of the playoffs, Seahawks, that is the second best matchup for running backs in fantasy football. So he is well worth a roster. He looks great. I think he's earned more touches. He's running with passion, forcing missed tackles, being elusive. I think he's earned a role regardless of Michael Carter. And when Michael Carter comes back, this will be a true split backfield. I'm willing to spend, same as James Cook, about 30% of my fab. Depends on how desperate you are. I am just obsessed with their playoff schedule, and I think there will be value here with Michael Carter and Zonovan Knight in the playoffs. Now, are they like your ideal players to start? No, of course, there are better options. But again, if you're running back needy, Zonovan could be a fantastic option as we head into the playoffs. So those are my top 10 waiver wire pickups. Why don't you comment down below? Let me know if you like some of these. Let me know if you don't. That's fine. Everyone's welcome to their opinion. And let me know what you need to happen tonight to win. Like the video, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yo, what's good? Thanks for watching. We got a lot more videos.
A lot more.
If you want more videos.
Watch it.
You can also subscribe.
Right now.
If you want to.
You need to.
And lastly, don't forget that you can sign up to support the show and get exclusive content by going to patreon.com/fantasylandfam.